Area 51. In 1989, a physicist named Bob Lazar walked into a Las Vegas news station and said something that would change conspiracy culture forever. He claimed he'd been working at a facility near Area 51, reverse engineering alien spacecraft. The government immediately denied his existence, erased his employment records, his education credentials, even his birth certificate from some databases. Here's what makes this terrifying. When journalists tried to verify his story, they found something even stranger than aliens. They found a pattern of erasure so systematic, so thorough, that it raised a darker question. What kind of organization has the power to delete a human being from official records? And why would they need to? But here's where it gets interesting. Lazar mentioned a specific element he'd seen at this facility, element 115. At the time, it didn't exist. It was theoretically possible, but had never been synthesized. 15 years later, in 2003, Russian scientists created it in a lab. It was added to the periodic table in 2004. So either Bob Lazar got impossibly lucky with his lie, or he saw something at Area 51 that we're not supposed to know about. The geography of secrets. Let's start with what we know for certain, because the truth is strange enough without the fiction. Area 51 is real. It's not a myth. It's a 2.9 million acre military installation in the Nevada desert, about 83 miles northwest of Las Vegas. The official name is Groom Lake, and it's part of the Nevada Test and Training Range. For decades, the U.S. government refused to even acknowledge it existed. Not a single official document mentioned it by name. Not until 2013, when a Freedom of Information Act request finally forced the CIA to admit, yes, there's a facility there, and yes, we've been testing aircraft. But here's the first peculiarity. The airspace above Area 51 is classified as R4808N, restricted military airspace. If you fly into it, even accidentally, military jets will intercept you within minutes. And if you ignore their warnings? In 1974, a Cessna pilot did exactly that. He was forced down by F-4 Phantom jets, detained, interrogated, his plane confiscated, and he was threatened with federal prosecution, all for flying over empty desert. Why does empty desert need that level of protection? The perimeter security is even more extreme. Motion sensors blanket the surrounding hills. Cameras track vehicles from miles away. Armed guards in white pickup trucks, locals call them camo dudes, patrol the boundaries 24/7. Warning signs every few hundred feet threaten deadly force for trespassers. Not arrest, deadly force, and they mean it. In 2019, two Dutch YouTubers tried to get close enough to film. They were detained for 3 days, fined $2,280 each, and their equipment was seized permanently. Think about that. Two tourists with cameras warranted 3 days of detention and thousands in fines. Meanwhile, there are classified military installations across America where you'd just be told to leave. What's at Area 51 that requires this level of secrecy? The facility itself is massive. Satellite imagery shows runways stretching over 12,000 feet, long enough to handle any aircraft in existence. There are dozens of hangars, some large enough to hide entire commercial jets. Underground tunnels connect buildings, their full extent unknown because ground-penetrating radar is illegal to use on military installations. And there's something else in those satellite images that aviation experts find disturbing. Certain hangars have no visible doors large enough for aircraft to enter or exit, which means either those hangars serve a different purpose entirely, or whatever's inside them doesn't use conventional doors. The history they couldn't hide. Area 51's history is a masterclass in how governments hide the truth in plain sight. The site was selected in 1955 by the CIA, not the Air Force. That detail matters. CIA Director Richard Bissell and Lockheed engineer Kelly Johnson flew over Nevada in a small plane, looking for a location remote enough to test aircraft that couldn't be seen by Soviet satellites or American civilians. They found a dry lake bed next to the Nevada test site, where nuclear weapons were being tested. Perfect cover. Any strange sightings could be dismissed as atomic test effects or radiation-induced hallucinations. The first aircraft tested there was the U-2 spy plane. It could fly at 70,000 feet, far higher than any plane of its era. When it flew over populated areas during test flights, commercial pilots reported seeing aircraft at impossible altitudes. The Air Force publicly dismissed these reports as weather phenomena or misidentified natural objects. Internally, documents now reveal they knew exactly what pilots were seeing. They just couldn't admit it without revealing the U-2's existence. This established a pattern: deny everything, even when denial seems absurd. In the 1960s, Area 51 became home to Project Oxcart, the development of the SR-71 Blackbird and its predecessor, the A-12. These aircraft could fly at Mach 3.2 over 85,000 feet high, with a titanium body that glowed red-hot from air friction. When people near Area 51 reported seeing glowing objects moving impossibly fast across the sky, the government called them liars, drunks, or attention seekers. Documents declassified in 2013 confirmed those people were absolutely telling the truth. They'd seen exactly what they said they'd seen. But here's where it gets complicated. In 1977, a forest fire near Area 51 killed several workers at the base. Their families tried to sue for wrongful death. The government responded by invoking state secrets privilege, refusing to confirm the deceased had even worked there. The families lost. Legally, those men never existed. If the government will erase dead men to protect Area 51 secrets, what will they do to protect its living ones? Then there's the environmental disaster they tried to bury. Throughout the 1980s, workers at Area 51 burned toxic waste in open pits: chemicals, paints, solvents, and according to some reports, materials from crashed aircraft that weren't from any country's air force. Several workers developed cancers. Some died. When they tried to sue, claiming the toxic exposure caused their illnesses, the government again invoked state secrets privilege. The case was dismissed. No investigation, no accountability, no admission that these men had even worked where they said they worked. One of those workers, Robert Frost, died of liver cancer in 1989. His widow continued the lawsuit. The government's response was chilling. They claimed that admitting whether toxic waste was burned at Area 51 would threaten national security. Think about that logic. Admitting they burned trash, something every military base does, would somehow endanger America. Unless it wasn't just trash. The witnesses who wouldn't stay quiet. Bob Lazar's 1989 interview changed everything, not because of what he said, but because of what happened after he said it. Lazar claimed he'd worked at S4, a facility near Papoose Lake, south of Groom Lake. His job, he said, was to reverse engineer propulsion systems from 9 extraterrestrial craft stored in hangars built into the mountainside. He described technology that seemed absurd: gravity amplifiers, antimatter reactors, craft that could bend space-time. He mentioned element 115 as the fuel source, an element that, at the time, existed only in theoretical physics papers. The government's response was swift and comprehensive. Within weeks, Lazar's birth certificate disappeared from official records. His supposed degrees from MIT and CALTECH couldn't be verified. The schools had no record of him attending. His previous employment at Los Alamos National Laboratory was denied until a reporter found an old phone directory listing his name and a 1982 news article showing him standing next to a jet car he'd built, identified as physicist Bob Lazar of Los Alamos. So he'd definitely worked at Los Alamos. But now Los Alamos said he never had. Lazar's story contains details that investigators still can't explain. He accurately described the layout of Area 51's security checkpoints, details not publicly known in 1989, but confirmed by satellite imagery years later. He knew about Janet Airlines, the unmarked 737s that ferry workers from Las Vegas to Groom Lake, before any public reporting on them existed. He described hand scanners that measured bone length for identification, a technology that wasn't publicly known until the mid-1990s. Either Lazar had access to classified information about Area 51, or he's the luckiest guesser in history. But Lazar wasn't the only one talking. In 1997, a man named Edgar Fuchs, who claimed to be a former Area 51 contractor, described a triangular aircraft called the TR-3B. He said it used something called magnetic field disruption technology, essentially creating a gravity field around the craft. Nonsense, right? Except in 2004, Boeing publicly filed a patent for a gravitational propulsion system that used rotating superconductors to create exactly the kind of field Fuchs described. Then there's the 2004 Nimitz incident. Navy pilots from the USS Nimitz encountered an object off the coast of San Diego that defied physics. It dropped from 80,000 feet to sea level in less than a second, with no visible propulsion, no wings, no exhaust. The Navy confirmed the video was real. The pilots went on record. The Pentagon admitted they couldn't explain it. One of those pilots, Commander David Fravor, said the object moved unlike anything he'd seen in 18 years of flying. It accelerated instantaneously, with no visible means of propulsion. Physicist Travis Taylor analyzed the video and calculated the G-forces involved would liquefy any human pilot. Nothing we publicly know about can move like that. But what if something we don't publicly know about can? The patterns they can't explain. Let's talk about the patterns because patterns reveal more than individual incidents ever could. Since 1947, there have been 701 documented military pilot encounters with unidentified aerial phenomena near Nevada Test Site in Area 51, according to declassified Air Force documents. That's 701 times trained military observers saw something they couldn't identify in the exact region where America's most secret aircraft are tested. Coincidence? Maybe. But here's what makes it strange. The encounters cluster around specific years: 1952, 1957, 1964, 1975, 1989. Those dates match up with known secret aircraft programs: the U-2, A-12, SR-71, F-117, and according to some researchers, programs that still haven't been declassified. It's almost like every time a new aircraft enters testing, sightings spike. And then years later, the aircraft is revealed and suddenly those impossible sightings make perfect sense. Except some of them still don't. The Belgium UFO wave of 1989 to 1990 involved over 13,500 witnesses, including police officers and military personnel who saw triangular craft hovering silently or accelerating at impossible speeds. Belgium's Air Force scrambled F-16s to intercept. The jets got radar locks. The objects were real, physical things. But every time the F-16s closed in, the objects accelerated beyond Mach 2 instantly, with no sonic boom, no heat signature, no infrared trace. Belgium's Air Force held a press conference and said essentially, "We don't know what these are, but they're real." Then the sightings stopped, completely, like someone flipped a switch. In 2017, former Pentagon official Luis Elizondo resigned in protest, claiming the U.S. government was ignoring credible evidence of advanced aircraft operating in American airspace. He ran a program called AATIP, Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, from 2007 to 2012, investigating military encounters with unknown aircraft. When he left, he took 3 videos with him and released them to the public. The Pentagon confirmed the videos were real. They confirmed AATIP existed. But they refused to discuss what those objects were, only that they remain unidentified. Here's the disturbing part. Elizondo said in multiple interviews that some of these craft were exhibiting technology decades, perhaps even centuries, ahead of anything America possesses. If that's true, only 2 possibilities exist. Either another nation, Russia or China, has secretly leapfrogged American technology by a century, or something else is flying in our skies. Both options are terrifying, and both point back to Area 51. The science they're hiding. Let's get technical for a moment, because the science is where things get genuinely disturbing. In 2018, the U.S. Navy patented technology for a craft using an inertial mass reduction device. The patent, filed by aerospace engineer Salvatore Pais, describes a vehicle that creates a quantum vacuum around itself, effectively reducing its inertial mass to near zero. This would allow instantaneous acceleration, no G-force effects on pilots, no sonic boom, and faster-than-light travel. The patent was initially rejected by the USPTO as too speculative. Then the Navy intervened. Dr. James Sheehy, the Navy's chief technology officer, wrote a letter to the patent office insisting the technology was operable and had been demonstrated to work. The patent was granted. Read that again. The U.S. Navy's CTO confirmed they've demonstrated working technology that reduces inertial mass. That's not theoretical. That's we've built this. And here's the kicker. Salvatore Pais has filed several related patents: room temperature superconductors, compact fusion reactors, high-frequency gravitational wave generators. Each one describes technology that, according to mainstream physics, shouldn't be possible, and each one has the Navy's backing. Where was this technology developed? The patents don't say. But Pius worked at Naval Air Warfare Center Aircraft Division. And where does NOCAD test experimental aircraft? Near restricted military airspace in the Southwest, like, say, Nevada. Then there's the work being done in quantum propulsion. In 2021, a team at DARPA, Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, published a paper on quantum vacuum engineering. They describe manipulating the zero-point energy field, the background quantum fluctuations that exist everywhere in space, to create propulsion without fuel. The paper casually mentions they've achieved preliminary experimental results, which means they've built something. Dr. Harold Sonny White, formerly of NASA's Advanced Propulsion Lab, has been working on warp drive technology, not science fiction warp drive, but actual manipulation of space-time using negative energy densities. In 2021, he announced his team had refined their model to the point where a warp bubble could theoretically be created with the energy equivalent of a few tons of mass, not the original Jupiter-sized mass requirement. His team published their results in peer-reviewed journals. NASA didn't stop them, which means either NASA's okay with scientists discussing warp drives, or the technology isn't as far-fetched as we thought. All of this research, inertial mass reduction, quantum vacuum engineering, space-time manipulation, requires facilities that don't exist on any public map. It requires testing ranges where failures won't be witnessed. It requires airspace that's completely controlled. It requires a place like Area 51, the eyewitness you can't dismiss. In 2014, a man named Dan Burish gave an interview that most people dismissed as fantasy. Burish claimed to be a former Area 51 microbiologist who'd worked on classified projects involving non-human biologics. Crazy, right? Except Burish's employment at various government contractors was verified. His academic credentials checked out. He had legitimate degrees, published papers, verifiable work history. And when researchers dug deeper, they found something unsettling. Burish had described in interviews from 2004 technological processes that weren't publicly known until years later. He mentioned CRISPR gene editing techniques in 2004. CRISPR didn't become widely known until 2012 and wasn't practically demonstrated until 2013. He described quantum entanglement communication systems, using entangled particles to send information instantaneously, in 2006. The first successful quantum entanglement communication experiment was publicly announced in 2017. Either Burish was involved in projects a decade ahead of public science, or he's impossibly good at predicting technological breakthroughs. But Burish isn't the only credible witness. In 1997, retired Army Colonel Philip Corso published The Day After Roswell, claiming he'd been part of a project that reverse-engineered alien technology recovered from the Roswell crash. He said technologies like fiber optics, integrated circuits, and night vision came from studying recovered materials. Sounds insane until you look at the timeline. Integrated circuits were invented at Texas Instruments in 1958, just 11 years after Roswell. Fiber optics were developed in the 1960s. Night vision technology appeared suddenly in the 1950s. All of these technologies emerged with surprisingly little developmental history. They just appeared, seemingly fully formed, from laboratories working on classified military projects. Correlation isn't causation, but the timing is interesting. Then there's the testimony of aerospace insider Edgar Mitchell, the sixth man to walk on the moon. Before his death in 2016, Mitchell repeatedly stated that UFOs were real, that the government had recovered crashed craft, and that reverse engineering programs existed at undisclosed locations. He said he'd been briefed by military insiders with direct knowledge. When an Apollo astronaut, someone with top-level security clearances and impeccable credibility, says recovered craft are being studied, You can't just dismiss it as a joke. The implications we're avoiding. Here's what we're really talking about, stripped of all the speculation and drama. If even 10% of the credible witness testimony is true, if Area 51 houses technology decades ahead of publicly known science, then we're living in a world with a massive technological gap between what the government possesses and what civilians know exists. Think about what that means practically. Every physics textbook is incomplete. Every engineering limitation we accept as fundamental might be artificial. The technological revolutions we're waiting for, clean energy, faster than light travel, gravity manipulation, might already exist, hidden in classified hangars in the Nevada desert. And if that's true, why hide it? Three possibilities, none of them comforting. First, national security. If America possesses technology that fundamentally breaks physics as we understand it, revealing that technology gives adversaries a blueprint, they'd know what's possible, which is halfway to knowing how to build it themselves. Secrecy maintains strategic advantage, but that explanation has problems. The Soviet Union collapsed in 1991. We've had 30-plus years of American near-total military dominance. If the goal was maintaining an edge over adversaries, we've achieved it. So why keep secrets from our own citizens? Second possibility, economic disruption. Imagine announcing we've solved energy scarcity through zero-point energy extraction or compact fusion reactors. The oil industry, representing trillions in global wealth and the geopolitical foundation of international relations, would collapse overnight. Same with aerospace, automotive, shipping, and a dozen other massive industries. The economic chaos could trigger worldwide depression. Keeping revolutionary technology classified might be about preventing economic catastrophe, not military secrets. But there's a third possibility, and it's the one nobody wants to discuss. What if the technology at Area 51 wasn't developed there? What if it's being studied, reverse engineered, analyzed, but not invented? If that's true, then secrecy isn't about protecting American innovation. It's about hiding a more disturbing truth. We're not alone. We've never been alone. And someone or something has been visiting Earth with technology we're only beginning to understand. And if that's what Area 51 is really hiding, then the question becomes, why keep that secret? The truth hiding in plain sight. The U.S. government's relationship with UFO disclosure has been bizarre, contradictory, and increasingly transparent. In 2017, the Pentagon confirmed the existence of AATIP and released 3 videos of unidentified objects. In 2019, the Navy issued new guidelines for pilots reporting UAPs, unidentified aerial phenomena, effectively admitting these encounters happen regularly enough to need reporting protocols. In 2020, a task force was established to investigate UAPs. In 2021, the Director of National Intelligence released a report confirming 144 military encounters with unknown objects, admitting that most remain unexplained, and acknowledging these objects demonstrate unusual flight characteristics. Then in 2023, David Grush, a former intelligence officer who worked on UAP investigations for the Pentagon, testified before Congress under oath. He claimed the U.S. government has recovered multiple craft of non-human origin and has been running reverse engineering programs for decades. He said he'd interviewed dozens of officials with direct knowledge, and that some of these programs operate out of facilities in Nevada. Congress took him seriously. They held hearings. They're investigating. We're watching, in real time, the slow disclosure of something massive. But here's what's strange. Even as this information comes out, even as government officials confirm under oath that we've recovered non-human craft, the mainstream conversation hasn't shifted. Most people still think UFOs are fringe conspiracy theories. The news covers Grush's testimony for a day, then moves on. It's like we're collectively unable to process what's being admitted. Psychologists call this normalcy bias, the tendency to believe things will continue normally even when evidence suggests massive disruption is coming. We're watching the government slowly admit to the existence of recovered craft and reverse engineering programs, and we're not reacting. Maybe because the implications are too large. If Grush is telling the truth, if Area 51 and similar facilities house recovered non-human technology, then everything changes. Our understanding of history, our place in the universe, The nature of intelligence itself, it's too much to process, so we just don't. But the admissions keep coming. In 2024, NASA established a dedicated UAP research team. The Pentagon released more videos. More whistleblowers came forward. The wall of secrecy is crumbling, slowly, deliberately, as if someone decided disclosure needs to happen gradually to avoid panic. What happens next? So where does this leave us? Area 51 exists. That's confirmed. Highly advanced aircraft are tested there. That's confirmed. The government has lied about what's tested there for decades. That's confirmed by declassified documents. Credible military witnesses have encountered craft displaying impossible technology. That's confirmed by Pentagon reports. Everything beyond that exists in a gray zone of plausibility, where the evidence is compelling but not conclusive, where government denials ring hollow, but proof remains elusive. But here's what we can say with certainty. Whether the technology at Area 51 is purely human innovation, reverse engineered from recovered craft, or something else entirely, it represents a fundamental gap between what the public knows is possible and what's actually being developed. That gap is dangerous. In a democracy, keeping revolutionary technology secret from citizens means those citizens can't participate in decisions about how that technology is used. If we've solved energy scarcity, climate change could be addressed tomorrow. If we've developed propulsion systems that don't require fuel, transportation could be revolutionized, lifting billions out of poverty. Every day that technology remains classified is a day those problems continue unsolved. Unless there's a reason, a legitimate, terrifying reason, it can't be revealed. Consider what Air Force veteran Michael Schratt said in a 2018 interview. Schratt claimed to have inside knowledge of Area 51 programs and said the facility is testing technology that would rewrite physics textbooks and collapse the world economy simultaneously. If true, that's not a decision made lightly. That's a decision made by people who believe the cure is worse than the disease. The Storm Area 51 event in 2019 was treated as a joke. 2 million people pledged on Facebook to Storm Area 51. They can't stop all of us. Most of it was memes and humor, but about 3,000 people actually showed up to the perimeter. The military response was overwhelming. Increased patrols, roadblocks miles from the base, a visible security presence that seemed excessive for an internet prank. Unless they were genuinely worried about what might happen if thousands of civilians reached the fence line simultaneously. What are they protecting? After everything we've examined, the whistleblowers, the patents, the government admissions, the technological impossibilities witnessed by military pilots, the answer feels closer than it's ever been. Conclusion. In 1955, the CIA chose a remote lakebed in Nevada to test aircraft that couldn't be seen. 70 years later, that facility remains one of the most classified places on Earth, protected by lethal force authorizations, denied in official records for decades, and shrouded in security measures that seem absurd for just an aircraft testing site. Bob Lazar's story might be true, or it might be the most elaborate lie ever told. But Element 115 exists now. The Navy has patented inertial mass reduction devices. Pentagon officials confirm encounters with craft displaying impossible technology. Whistleblowers with credentials testify under oath about reverse engineering programs. Something is being hidden at Area 51. Whether it's human technology so advanced it would rewrite physics, or non-human technology being studied and replicated, or something else entirely, the evidence points to one conclusion. What we're told is possible and what's actually possible are not the same thing. And maybe that's the real secret. Not aliens, not flying saucers, not little green men. But the fact that reality is far stranger, far more advanced, and far more carefully controlled than we've been allowed to believe. The truth isn't out there. It's in a hangar in the Nevada desert, guarded by men with guns and protected by laws that will erase you if you get too close. And maybe, just maybe, we're finally reaching a point where they can't keep it hidden anymore. The question is, are we ready for what happens when the hangar doors finally open?